Welcome, welcome, welcome to Week Old Beans, what I believe is episode 17. 17 episodes into this bitch, I think. Might be 16, I don't fucking know. I'm Ardot, your host, the main host. And this is my co-host, Fowler. Fowler, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
I am Fowler. I am the more attractive and intelligent co-host of this podcast.
He says as he sounds like Data from Star Trek when he introduces himself. Like fucking...
Well, one of us wasn't able to go to fancy pants art acting school. One of us had to,
Why would you...
do the more mean bones.
Why would you dox me like that, bro? Fuck you. Nobody needs to know about my failed acting career, okay? Just like nobody
It's
needs to
not
know about
failed.
your... Just...
It's not failed. It's in remission.
Yeah, just like nobody needs to know about your failed fucking everything career, okay? Fuck you. We have... So...
I'll have you know that I was the best guard at Guantanamo Bay. I did a great job.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you made him play Pokemon Go or some shit like that. Anyway. So... We are gonna... Yeah, it's a weak-ass opening, but it's fine. We struggled to come up with a topic for today.
Don't tell them that.
Why not? Why can't I be honest with my viewers? Why do I have...
You're showing them the sausage. That's rule number one of what you don't
What the
do.
fuck is the sausage? What does that mean? What the hell is the I've never heard that
Have you
before.
you've
Explain.
never heard the manager show them the sausage or show
I,
them what's in the sausage?
I've never heard that. That must be something that you northerners come up with. I don't think that's ever been said anywhere in any place outside of a gay bar or a like a niche 17th century like writers book club where half of the men are alcoholics and the other half want to kill themselves. That's the only two places that could have possibly ever been said.
That was the best. That was the best point in American history. It's all downhill from here.
Probably. Anyway, no, I did not show them the sausage, Fowler. I am just being honest with my viewers, which I feel like more people need to be. But we struggled to come up with a topic for today, mostly because it's been a very slow news week, but then also because, like, the Obama video did so well that we're trying to live up to our own expectation. Um, so, as we were trying to come up with topics, I was struck with with the memory of a conversation that Fowler and I had months ago. Um,
I do not remember this conversation. Ardot assures me it's a great convo,
it
so we're
was a
gonna have
great
it.
combo.
But I do not remember any of it. So
It's
we'll see
okay.
if I can
Look,
deliver on my end.
look, one of us has to be your missing brain cell, okay? It's fine. One of us has to pick up the slack for your inability to remember basic conversations. But it was a great combo. I remember it distinctly. We spoke mostly about the early American days, the days, right around the Revolutionary War when
Ardot
the
has a hard on for the Revolutionary era. I have a hard on for the Industrial era, the Gilded Age, and the
I
1930s.
love the Revolutionary War era. I am just fascinated with the Revolutionary War, like 1600s to to late 1700s. The golden age of piracy, the early settling of the United States, the I guess the beginning of what would come to be the transatlantic slave trade, although that really started in the 1400s, but really reached a crescendo in the 16th and 17th century. I just find it all in all...
If you weren't black, you might get in trouble for saying that the highlight of one of your eras was the
Definitely
slave trade.
slavery. Awesome. Really good stuff. Uh, you know, those boats sailing were wetter than anything we've ever seen from the standpoint of water, as a wise man once said. Uh, um, no, like, look, like, it's just a very interesting period in history, I think. A lot of things happen during that period that shape our world today. And I think it's a lot of things that people don't know about and a lot of things that people sort of take for granted. So all in all, I think it's just a very interesting time period to study. I think it's, Um, I just find it, interesting. Fowler has a hard on for the industrial period, which I find very bland and depressing, because it was basically just people shitting in the streets and, like, people going crazy. But I understand why you enjoy that period of history. Why do you like that period of history so much? Explain to the people.
The rise of the robber barons, the rise of populist politics. It was when everything was in flux. The business was expanding, government was expanding, all that corruption. It was just a time where everything was alive. Same with the 1930s, but with more fascism, basically.
Yeah, I'm not knocking on your interest. I think that definitely was also an interesting period. So, it's almost like, the 2 points in history that meant the most and that changed the most. The night, the early, 1600s, 1700s in the industrial period. Um, you know, so I see why you would find that part of history to be, really, really interesting. But we're not going to be talking about your time period, Fowler. We'll have to save that for another episode. You can wax away at your robber barons and populist politics. We're here to talk about the goddamn United States of America, the founding of this great nation that you and I both reside in love with all of our hearts. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the men who founded this great nation. This
I'm
interesting
not
bunch.
used to. I'm not used to Ardot being this patriotic. I feel like there's a
What do you
gun
mean
off
you're not?
screen.
Why do you mean you're not used to me being this patriotic?
I feel like there's a person with a gun next to you, forcing you to read these lines. It's the only
No.
time you've ever said that you loved America,
No, it's not.
unlike me.
I say I love America every goddamn day. Fuck you. Get the fuck out of here. I have the fucking American flag literally on my wall right now. Like I look to the right slightly and there was a big ass stars and stripes hanging on the fucking wall. Okay? Don't ever insult me like that again, bitch. Some fucking fighting words, okay?
Listen, it's okay. Some of us care about America, some of us don't. Apples and oranges.
You're telling a southerner they don't care about the United States. That's like it's evil, bro. It's evil. I hope you guys can't hear me playing Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered in the background. Speaking of how much I fucking love America, I'm playing Assassin's Creed 3. That's how much I fucking love America. What are you doing, Fowler? What are you doing? You're sitting at your goddamn computer looking at me with your fucking fish mouth and fucking crazy eyes. Fuck you.
All right, do you want to start the conversation? I
No,
feel
I
like you've
don't
subjected
actually.
enough
I
people.
actually don't want to. I'm mad now. You've got me riled the fuck up. Riled the fuck. Let's start the convo. We'll come back to this later. I'll properly berate you off camera. Uh, where I can use harsher language.
What is the podcast family friendly now? Are we going to the tweeds? Are we competing with Logan Paul for the demographic?
No, we're fine. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking about early America, and God, I hope I can remember this conversation too. Shit, I made fun of you, and I'm starting to blank. um, you know, America is interested. We're the oldest surviving democracy. We are, the world's superpower. We are the wealthiest country. We are the most prosperous country. In some regard, there are ways in which we could do better, as we all here think. But, um, all in all, America has had a pretty good damn run, if you ask me. Wouldn't you agree, Fowler?
I mean, depends on what we're talking about. I think we're talking about this in the context of democratic norms. The United States is like a golden um, example of like peaceful transfer of power, democratic responsibility, and we know from the French and the Russians that that isn't always the case.
No, and so, one of the conversations we were having was about how the formation of the United States, um, the ways in which the founding fathers framed the Constitution, the ways in which, the members of the sort of founding group of America, the founding, members, the ways in which they developed the Constitution to be a reflection of, democracy and, the checks and balances as well as the bitter arguments that members of that group had about the direction that America needed to go in. And I think one of the biggest examples of this, um, maybe not the biggest example, but a really good example of this, and I will always say, I think I said this in the last podcast, George Washington's, desire to not become the king of the United States, his willingness to step down when he realized that his time was up. And I think that, I think more than maybe anything else, that symbolic gesture set the stage for America to have the, peaceful transitions of power that it's had. And I think, right now, bringing it back to modern day, we are at a precipice. We are standing at a time when all of that is under threat by the GOP and Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting that the United States, going back from the present to the past, that the United States was able to so peaceably transfer power and continue democracy. A lot of the darker things that happened, in particular in the French Revolution, just didn't happen in America. Like Washington had the option to become the king of America, and he chose not to. Unlike Robespierre and the Jacobins, who took power and then kind of viciously continued that until the end. We created a constitution that we actually followed, unlike the France. Like there were just a lot of
Did you just
times
hang on? Did
where,
you just say unlike the France?
unlike French, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
they didn't really do the separation of state or separation of powers. They kind of fucked up. Also, when the French moderates and the French liberals disagreed about policy, unlike the founders who respectably shit talked each other in newspapers and wouldn't invite each other to dinner galas, the Jacobins, the liberal faction, just murdered all the conservatives. So, there's just a lot of points in history where, like, things went very wrong when it came to um, other governments and other countries, and those times didn't happen for the United States, for better or for worse.
Now, a point that you made during our conversation that I think is really interesting is, um, we talked about revolutionary rhetoric and how, and particularly violent revolutionary rhetoric. And, you made the point. I'm repeating your own words back to you because your brain is like empty and you don't remember this conversation. Uh, but you made the point that the economic status of the founding fathers, wealthier, more educated, that was part of the reason why they were able to resort to more, I guess, less violent measures when it came to their disagreements, and why they were able to develop the Constitution and the United States government the way it was. And that, in a way, early democracy was not democratic. I mean, I don't think
It
anybody
was
here.
elite.
It was elitist, right? I don't think anybody here will disagree with the fact that, I mean, for a big chunk of American history, the only people that could hold power were white landowning males of good moral character. And over time, the stipulations were whittled away. Women were given the right to vote, black people were given the right to vote, Native Americans were given the right to vote. Uh, you know, the requirements for owning land were rescinded, so whites of any status could vote. Uh,
I think this is true less in a comparative example to other colonial era um, revolutions, and it's much more applicable in like the 20th century, where a lot of the communist revolutions were like working class people with limited education who took power. And I think those things were very bloody because like there's going to be a level of civility to the American initial American revolutionaries because they were all like lawyers and businessmen, and so they had a compulsion to keep things relatively clean, and they had like a system that they could use to organize peacefully. And then also, I think ideologically, they were protected because, unlike, except for maybe Hamilton, most of the founding fathers were fairly conservative when it came to power. And when they created America, essentially, they were paranoid about like the centralization of power and um, overstepping. So they created an incredibly controlled experiment that has all these safeguards in check, some of which were elitist, in order to basically ensure democracy survived past them.
Yeah, and then, as you saw over time throughout, the gradual expansion of democratic power to different groups of people, I mean, I would make the case that, like, that is the reason why America was able to undergo, the transition of the peaceful transitions of power that it underwent. Um, for better or for worse, because democracy was slowly, disseminated amongst the population. It wasn't, it wasn't sort of this mass populist movement that got out of control as it happened, during the French Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, the founding fathers were not really populist. They were all elitist, upper class people. And really the first like true populist in American history is Andrew Jackson. And I think it's very telling that Andrew Jackson was working class, that Andrew Jackson was um, from the next generation.
Yeah. Um, I'm picking this lock in Assassin's Creed right now, bitch.
It makes me wonder because obviously Ardot and I lean liberal, but and there are times where conservatives have better or worse arguments. And I think that the conservative ideology of the founders, and they were kind of a combination. I mean, it was radically liberal for you to form a democracy of no king, but they were conservative when it came to the centralization of power.
Yeah.
They were conservative when it came to checks and balances. I think,
They were conservative, from our standpoint. I mean, this is going to sound like a cope in a way, and it's not. It's one that it's a statement that not a lot of people like, but obviously you are a product of your time, and so looking back on them, they seem in our eyes radically conservative, but you have to remember, like, the idea of forming a democracy at that time was democracy was not the norm, nor had it ever been. In most of the world during their time. It still really isn't the norm, but especially in the late 1700s, democracy was not it was not the most successful model.
but like even within the time, like I would argue that the French Revolution were way more radical, and not just like ideologically, but like they weren't like as careful about not centralizing power, creating checks and balances. Like there are a lot of ways that the founding fathers like deliberately limited democracy in ways that they felt were prudent.
Yeah, and it's yeah, it's I'm just saying, yeah, because you're spitting facts, Fowler. You're spitting mad facts, bruv. You're spitting mad facts,
And
bruv.
I this might not have been in the purview of our conversation, but I think
Anything's
there's a
within the purview of our conversation. This damn podcast. What do you mean? We talk about whatever the fuck
but,
we want. We got like
but
an hour left. What do you mean?
that's fair. I think it will be interesting to see whether the founders experiment is successful because they did want this like radical revolutionary government that allowed all these people to interact. They wanted to find a way of creating government that didn't centralize power in a way that would make it unequal. And they wanted to do it in an incredibly massive, heterogeneous country that has only become more heterogeneous and larger. And, there are like scholars and historians who question the idea of like, can democracy survive being um, heterogeneous population? Or are the issues of the different groups going to escalate to the point that there is no way to peacefully hold power? And I think that's being tested now, and it was tested in the 1930s.
It was tested even during the even during the early days of America. It's always
Which events are you thinking about?
well, I mean, like the mass. If we're talking about just immigration, because that's really the only big example. But um, you know, like the early German immigrants that came to the United States, and then the Irish, obviously. But it's funny. The book I'm reading, Fowler, they talk about that in the sense of labor, and they talk about that heterogeneity in the sense of like they make a point to say that like the Industrial Revolution further exacerbated the differences between rural and urban. It further exacerbated the differences between the elites. It created the middle class, like the middle class was caught in between the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich. They acted as sort of like a buffer, um and that buffer is what led to the emergence of early 1900s progressivism. um
Hmm.
And so they make the point to say that even the labor divisions were probably even greater than any, and then, racial divisions that happened. But, even within the labor movements, the racial divisions, the religious divisions, the Roman Catholics that were also part of the labor movement but were excluded, the Jews who were also part of the labor movement but were excluded. And then, of course, you have, in the agrarian movement, you have, millions of, or maybe not millions, but thousands of African Americans in the South who did own land, who did farm. And then you had, of course, out in California, Chinese and Japanese immigrants who also owned a little bit of farmland. Um, so just the nature of progress, leads to heterogeneity. And it's an interesting idea that, can democracy survive um, heterogeneity? And and I think when people say heterogeneity they think about race, but heterogeneity really means any difference. I mean, labor
It can
differences
your
are huge.
heterogeneity can be even just religious, like in
Yeah,
India or Pakistan.
yeah, it's any difference. So it's interesting, and
But we have to make the point if we're talking about like the founder's genius, also their flaws. They created a system that was incredibly durable and resilient and made it very difficult for you to change a lot of the basic blueprint of it, like the democracy and checks and balances. But we haven't effectively had a real democracy until the 1960s when Black people were allowed to vote. And we still don't have a real democracy in places in the country where there's massive voter fraud and there's or not voter fraud,
voter
sort of
suppression.
voter suppression, voter intimidation. So their system was admittedly extremely durable, but the question is maybe at what cost?
Yeah. You know um I read a book. One of the books I finished talked about the Republican Party, the party switch, the modern Republican Party. And an interesting point that the book made was talking about how, when black people were given the right to vote in the United States, the new flock of voters that the differing political parties had to compete, or had to appeal to now, because you had large amounts of black people being allowed, even prior black men, and then women, being allowed to vote post emancipation. It radically changed the way that politics were conducted in the South. And one of the points the book makes is that what is now the GOP, what was then the Democrats, and then eventually party switch, yada yada. But the 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 party, what is now the GOP, they had to resort to crazy ass tactics because they were just so unorganized and so unable to like organize politically in the way that their opponent was able to. And further the further flock of new voters um you know changed that. So I mean, just like, I don't want to take for granted just how much voting um can change things, and giving the expansion of democracy. Maybe not voting itself, but definitely the expansion of democracy, how much that changes things.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing a lot of reactionary rhetoric because of how the different demographics voting have caused things to change. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy famously
Oh God, you're
argued against
gonna
um,
least
basically
favorite
allowing young
Republican.
people to vote.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Don't give
But
me.
he famously basically said that like young people don't vote conservative, and so like maybe we should low key get rid of their ability to vote.
Oh yeah, it's always been a tactic. It's a anti-democratic tactic, but it fits right within the framework of the United States. You know, you can't fault Vivek. He is following the framework of those that came before. Uh, um,
Yeah, I think it's very telling that the Southern racists of the Dixiecrat era, they were all pro democracy while Black people couldn't vote. But now that Black people can vote and other demographics, they are increasingly reticent to claim elections are fraudulent, do massive voter suppression, change the laws to stop different demographics from voting. I think it's very telling, and that was always going to happen as America became less white. Is there was going to be a crossroads where white Americans would have to look down at it and say like, is losing a couple elections or even changing fundamentally the way that we live through those elections, is it worth keeping democracy or is it not?
scary shit.
Do you have anything else to say on the topic, or do you want to switch to our second topic?
I forgot what our second topic was. What did we say it was?
Tucker Carlson and his
His.
downsizing.
Oh God. Let me check the
So,
time.
so
We can
Tucker
switch.
Carlson. Okay, so Tucker Carlson, famous demagogue, far right populist, potentially white nationalist who worked for Fox News, their
But
top
bow
host.
tie wearing. He stares very weirdly at the screen, and he always looks perpetually confused.
Yes, um, he is the dopiest looking demagogue we've ever had,
Yeah.
probably. But he got fired from Fox because he cost them at least $800 million lying on air,
That is
and
incredible still. Continue.
and so he navigated to Twitter, and he has a Twitter
I'm sorry,
show, and
Fowler,
Elon
let me
Musk.
stop you. It's X now, okay? X, formerly Twitter. That's what we say. That's what all the
Okay, the
newspapers say.
company formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, now it's
Um,
X.
I feel like X sounds like a porn name.
It is. It
Like
like
I
when you
just
look up X, the first thing that pops up is X videos. Uh, Elon Musk is obsessed
anyways,
with having. Okay, sorry.
anyways. So he did incredibly well on his first show, but he has lost. I think the article said 85% of his original viewers, which Arda and I are not mathematicians, but I would say that is a pretty sizable amount of people.
That's the big ass number.
Yeah, and so he's become increasingly desperate to kind of get public attention, to the point that he has accused Obama of recent of being a crackhead who fucks men. And I think it really tells. One of the things that really sticks out in my mind in history is George Wallace, the famous segregationist and racist. He would always say that like he wasn't really the one in control. Like he couldn't talk about anything but race because race was the only way that he would get elected. If he talked about healthcare or education or anything like that, no one would give a damn about him. And I think like that quote is very true and very dark. And I think we're seeing that with Tucker Carlson, where he was useful to the right in spreading propaganda about racial politics and things like that. But like he was merely a cog in the machine. And Fox has shown that they can get rid of anyone, no matter how important they are, in the face of the company, and they'll be fine. And so like it's kind of, Tucker had this reputation as like one of the most dangerous like figures in media, but it turned out like his influence outside of Fox is pathetic.
Yeah, and it's I think Jesse Waters took his spot, and I've seen a couple clips of Jesse, and he's just as, I mean, eh, eh, Jesse doesn't have any of the writing skills that Tucker has when it comes to the propaganda. Um, but I mean, it
And I
really
think it's important. I think it's important to note that one of the things that made Tucker so dangerous is like Fox coverage is biased and bad and all that, but Tucker wasn't just malicious or propagandistic. He actively dabbled in conspiracy theories, like about Jan 6 being a false flag attack, or like, and he dabbled in racial politics that was so much more extreme than um and than his contemporaries. He, basically has implied heavily that South Africa becoming democratic to black voters was a bad thing. He's praised far right figures who are basically fascists in Eastern Europe. He, Fox News is a propaganda machine that pushes out far right content, but he, even for them, was more conspiratorial and more out there and more racially antagonistic than I think anyone before him. And, I don't know how Jesse Waters is, but I would imagine everyone after him. And it's part of why I think he led to them getting sued is he
he flew too
he
close to the
flew
sun.
yeah.
He burnt his wings off. Fucking dumbass. But it was always inevitable. I mean, it's a matter of like, what you and I've talked about, is it that you control your base or does your base control you? Does the Tucker Carlson Fox News audience control what he puts out or does he control them? And, as they got more and more and more extreme, and as Trump became more and more and more extreme, I mean, Tucker kind of had to follow. He was at the mercy of his audience and at the Fox News audience, and he was at the mercy of Donald Trump at the end. Donald Trump doing January 6th, Tucker couldn't come out and say, well, that was not good. He had to defend him. And defending him and defending the conspiracies, defending the Dominion shit, all that is what led to him, costing his company $800 billion or $800 million, almost a billion, practically $1 billion, probably $1 billion. Once
And
everything's said
you
and
have to
done.
remember that they're being sued by Smartmatic.
Yes, for
Smartmatic is suing them for over $2 billion. So it could be at the end of the day, if the lawsuit goes really poorly, Tucker Carlson could cost the company $3 billion.
that's insane. And
If you ever fuck up in life, just remember you never fucked up so badly you cost your employer $3 billion.
I'd wear that shit like a badge of honor. Should be on my fucking
you
resume.
you would do so in the welfare line.
Yeah, exactly. Going to get my Medicaid. Look, I will not cost Medicaid $3 billion. I promise you that.
Maybe a challenge to George Wallace's aphorism is Donald Trump, who the right wing media has basically abandoned. They're all pushing DeSantis, and yet, in spite of that, he has created this relationship with his base where, he's still like 50 points in the Republican primary. He's
which is
destroying all of his
insane.
competition. Yeah, and I think Trump is an example of the opposite of a person who very much is in control and it very much can say whatever he wants with and sort of affect discourse. And Donald Trump has a lot of interesting legacies tied to him. One of the legacies that I think is most important is his normalization of anti-democratic talk about stolen elections, about voter fraud, about like he recently said something about like indicting his political opponents if he becomes the president again, abolishing the Constitution. He is someone who has not only reached the spotlight, but is actively shaping discourse in a way that will affect tens of millions of people.
Yeah. It's a fucking dangerous game. I mean, I tell people all the time. I mean, I've had infuriating conversations with people about the idea of democracy and how, important democracy is and how important it is to have um, a stable society. I think people take that shit for granted in ways that I'm not comfortable with. But I think it's, it's one of those you have to see it to believe it type of deals, and I've definitely seen it. I've been to places where they've not had stable democracies. I have people that I know, friends that I know, who have come from places that do not have stable democracies. And like people are, people are Americans in particular, because we just, not to shit on the viewers, but Americans are kind of stupid.
I don't know if I would say that. That might be you're out on your own, Ardot,
all
on
right,
that one.
all right. Let me backtrack. Let me rephrase what I said. America.
The only person who can insult his voter base and survive in a democratic country is Winston Churchill, and even that, they did immediately boot him after World War II ended.
It's fine. Winston did what Winston needed to do. I'm doing what I need to do by having a hard conversation. I'm gonna sound like Vivek, okay? I'm gonna tell y'all the hard truth, and then I just name a bunch of random shit that has nothing to do with anything. Uh, God is real. There are two genders. It feels great when my dick goes into a pussy. Taco Bell is disgusting. Like, just random shit that has nothing, that's completely unrelated to politics. Anyway. This is the hard truth, guys. Americans, we need to work on our geography. We need to work on our geology, okay? We need to work on our map skills, okay? I've met too many people who don't know where Greece is on a map. That's concerning. Okay? Little sus. It's a little bit. What I mean to say, I don't mean to say that we're stupid as Americans. What I mean to say is that we have issues, I think, recognizing how dog shit it is in other places, because we don't really know about a lot of other places because our education system is bad. I'm not impugning Americans and saying that we're just genetically less intelligent than other people. I'm just saying we have a bad education system. Texas produces most of our textbooks. Look at where Texas is ranked on education. Newsflash, not the best. Anyway,
There goes the Texas vote of our podcast.
It's okay.
They're all
Texas
gone.
knows. Texas understands me. I'm speaking to the Texas people.
All 300 of those views on the Obama one were all Texans. They're all gone now.
Yeah. Why would they? If they're Texans, they're not watching that because they like Obama. They're watching that. They're the people that commented that Obama was the worst president on the video. That's them. That's what do you mean? Look. What I'm trying to say from the bottom of my heart is that we need to do better as Americans at understanding how important our democracy is to us. And we need to understand that we cannot lose our democracy, and democracy is important. That's what I meant to say. If it came across as me insulting, I don't apologize, because I said what the fuck I said, bitch, okay? I said what the fuck I said. Don't play with me.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I think one of the problems with democracy in general is not democracy in general, attacks against democracy, is that it can happen very slowly and subtly. You can have figures like Erdogan in Turkey or Netanyahu kind of in Israel, where like they slowly erode checks and balances and they slowly centralize power. And even if the first authoritarian does not succeed, if you create a precedent where authoritarians can fuck with democracy and they're not punished or penalized in any way, then you create a precedent that other aspiring authoritarians can enter power and twist things into their own, like I think Trump has created a precedent. Like even if he doesn't become the president again, like if Trump is not punished, which it looks like he's going to now, but if Trump was not punished, like what's to stop another up and coming ambitious person from being like, oh, I'm going to lose this election anyway. Okay, fuck it. Like there's precedent for it. I'm going to steal the election.
Yeah, well, and I think it's why such an interest in bringing it back to the original topic. Why I have such an interest in early colonial America, because I feel like I don't mean to suck George Washington's dick here, but I am sucking his dick because I think it is absolutely remarkable that he decided to willingly give up becoming the king of the United States. I think the fact that he, through his own volition, decided that it would be better for the country to step away from power, to allow a new generation to take over and, forge America. I think that is remarkable. And it's like it's just remarkable. It is. And, looking at, the way politics are conducted today versus the way politics were conducted then, it was nasty and dirty back then too, but there was a basic understanding that democracy was the way to go. But that was because people had fought and died for it. You know what I mean? We were just
hopefully a Trump will make our generation more patriotic and more sensitive to the importance of democracy. I'm hoping that will be his legacy.
Well, I would hope too, but I mean, it really depends. I mean, that's what I'm worried about. My big worry is that Trump will not make people sensitive to democracy. People have to understand what fascism is. They have to understand what it means to be anti-democratic.
Maybe that's the next video we should do on A Slow News Day, is we should really unpack fascism and talk about Umberto Eco and talk about like the tendencies of fascism. That might be a good later video.
Yeah, I definitely think, because I had a conversation with somebody who, they liked Trump. They thought that Trump was great. And when I brought up the fact that Trump was a fascist to them, they didn't know what that meant. They didn't know what they didn't know what it meant to be anti-democratic. They didn't understand, like, they thought that Trump spoke really well. They thought that he stuck it to the man. He told the media to fuck off, and he was, but at the very bottom of all that, he's a fascist. Like, like, and that, I think, disqualifies any person, regardless of how good their politics is, or that should disqualify any person, no matter how good, regardless of how good their politics is, from holding, office in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's a stereotype for a reason, the whole, like, I'll vote for anyone if they make the trains run on time. And I think we're kind of seeing that in the present. We can't forget how disastrous Donald Trump was and how unprecedented he was. We can't forget that he attempted to overthrow the election. We can't forget that he essentially enabled and escalated Jan 6, not only getting the rioters to attack the Capitol, but removing the metal detectors and being slow about calling the National Guard in such a way that led to people being in danger. Like, Vivek Ramaswamy might be in the news a lot right now for saying something dumb, or Ron DeSantis for being uncharismatic and unlikable. But, like, they are not the big threat to America. It's still Trump.
Yeah. Well, damn, we brought it back full circle. We're at 45 minutes. See, I told you we could talk about that shit for a whole podcast, bitch. Why do you doubt me? Why do you give me...
I forgot how wise and filled with knowledge I was.
I forgot how...
I underestimated myself.
Oh, really? Okay, we can run it back, and I can look at the timestamp, see how much you talk versus how much I talk. Do y'all see what I put up with doing this podcast? It's a miracle I've not had 1,000 gray hairs yet.
You'll get there. You don't have my good genes.
Black don't crack, baby. What do you mean I don't have my good genes? Black don't crack, baby. That's what they say.
I'm, for people listening, I'm Asian, and my mom sat me down when I was a little kid, and she said,
moisturize. Sorry.
No, even worse. She said, you're Asian, you're an Asian man, which means you look 20 until you're 40, and then you'll look 80.
Well, you're half Asian, so we're gonna see which. God, I can make so many. I'm scared to make. I'm gonna get canceled if I make jokes. I'm gonna say you're. For those, can I divulge in your ethnic background to the folks listening, Fowler?
Sure.
For the joke. So he is, Fowler is, he's 2/3 of the Axis powers, as I say.
We'll leave it up to you.
I'll let you guess which. We'll leave it up to the viewers to guess which ones it is. Okay. But oh shit, what was it? We gotta sign out. I gotta continue playing Assassin's Creed, guys. I'm playing Assassin's Creed 3, the remastered version. I forgot how much I love this game. Anyway, sign us out, Fowler. I don't want to do it. I always do it.
Anyways, that is our show. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.
Don't tell them to feel free. Demand that they like, comment, and subscribe. I'm demanding that y'all like, comment, and subscribe to this shit. Okay.
See, if you were George Washington like in your temperament, you would be like, whether they subscribe or not subscribe is no concern of me. But I don't deserve the likes and the subscribes.
Now I said that I would suck Washington's dick. I never said that I was George Washington. Okay. Don't get it twisted.
You would have taken that deal to be the king of America?
Probably. Unfortunately. Yeah. I can't.
So anyways.
I am thirsty, if you know what I mean.
Enough of your thirsts, okay? They've suffered through 45 minutes of this video. They don't need to hear that shit. But anyways, we're signing off and we'll see you next week.